Setting traditions in a blended family can feel like navigating a minefield. There are often feelings of loss around changes in the households. Sometimes there's merging of traditions from two different homes. And often there's disappointment associated with the expectation versus reality of it all. And that's not to mention the pressure so many of us feel to do so much to make every moment special. So today we're going to look at how to establish traditions and how to simplify to what matters most. I'm Deanna. I'm a mom and a stepmom and, as my husband puts it, a fan of organized fun. That means I want to do all the things. I like to plan structured activities and outings, and often if it was fun one time, I want it to become a tradition. And one of the things that I've learned is not everything that we enjoyed has to become a tradition. We'll talk about that more in a bit. But first, I want to define traditions for our purposes today. So traditions are usually customs, behaviors, beliefs, often passed down from generations and within a culture, and they really help us with our sense of identity and belonging and a connection to our history. Which leads me to my first step in setting meaningful traditions as a blended family, and that is to remember not everything has to become a tradition. Many of us are living overscheduled lives as it is, which is a whole other topic. But when it comes to traditions and ideas for setting traditions, there is no limit to what we have access to. With social media, we get bombarded with different ideas, and then within our communities and our social groups, we may get invited to so many different things. And it's really easy to just, before you know it, have said yes to so many things that there is no breathing room in your schedule. I'm going to share a couple examples from my own life, most recently around the fall season. And so I, like so many girls, love fall. And, I do like a pumpkin spice latte also, but I make my own at home. But there's so many fun things we can do in the fall season. It's also back to school season. So it's also already a time of change for our children. What we see as a fun-filled calendar and family traditions may start to feel overwhelming for our kids, and the traditions may start to lose their meaning. Remember, what we're going for here is establishing sense of identity and belonging, community, connection to history, not checking things off of a to-do list. As someone who genuinely likes organized fun, I feel tempted to turn everything into a tradition and repeat it every year. But for example, this year, we decided that not everybody liked going to the pumpkin patch. So I asked the kids, I knew my husband didn't like going, and we let them choose. And we gave some other options. And then we also asked about a party that we throw for our neighborhood every year. And they did want to do the party. And so I'll admit, I was kind of going to be okay with skipping the party this year, but I learned from them that it was important to them, and so that is a tradition that we will continue. In the end, I was glad that I threw the party, and it was really good information to learn from the kids that this is something they really enjoy, and so I'm not putting all this effort into it, feeling like, oh, I don't even know if they care that we do it. Now I know that they do. Now I know that they love it, and that actually made it a lot more fun to put all of the effort and the work into the prep for doing something I knew was meaningful to them. And giving everyone who didn't feel like going to the pumpkin patch permission to opt out made it a much more fun outing for those of us who did want to go. We weren't there trying to force some kind of tradition on people who just weren't that into it. There are also things we've done as a family that were really fun and meaningful, but we might not repeat it, and that is okay too. Something can be an event, it can be a special memory, and it doesn't necessarily have to become a tradition just because it was a good time. So under this umbrella of not everything has to be a tradition, I would just say ask yourself, is this something that we actually enjoy? Does the whole family enjoy doing it? Or is it an opportunity for one-on-one time? And then also, is it just an event? Is it just a standalone thing that is good enough as it is and we don't need to repeat to make it matter? Moving on to a category where some of the messier feelings around traditions, especially for blended families, may live, which is traditions are allowed to change. Now, in our family, I came in as a stepmom and then we had our son together. So I didn't experience being a truly blended family where you are merging families that exist and traditions that exist together. I was coming in helping define our new traditions as a new family together, and our kids were very young when we got married. So there weren't a lot of established traditions that had repeated over and over throughout their childhood. Even so, it was important to me to be aware and respectful around things that might be special to them that they do with their mom, memories of things that they had done as a family before I was part of it, that I wouldn't want to step on or try to replace or change the way that those things were done. And so I think if you're coming into an existing family, if you're a step parent, it is important to just remember, like, these guys were here before I was here, and not impose your own ideas and your own ways of doing things and your own traditions on them. On the flip side, you don't need to just disappear into the background and go along with whatever traditions they already have for fear of stepping on anyone's toes. You are part of this family now, and you deserve to be part of it. You deserve to celebrate and honor traditions that matter to you and be part of them. So I think it's a pretty common thing that a lot of step parents struggle with, is feeling like, you're tiptoeing around, not wanting to hurt anybody's feelings and not speaking up for yourself. And so when it comes to these traditions, when it comes to things where you're coming in maybe with different ideas, I would say always respect what existed before, and then be willing to and open to voicing how your ideas can be integrated in so everybody feels part of it. Or you may discover that there's a way to keep a tradition alive with the original family who it mattered to, and that maybe you do some things separate. Again, that's totally okay. Not everything in step families and blended families needs to be all together all the time. I think sometimes we do feel this pressure to do that, but in first families, in families that are not dealing with divorces and remarriages, it's totally fine for them to do one-on-one time, and that's okay for us too. In fact, it can be a great way to connect with your stepkids, to set some traditions that are one-on-one. I do with my stepdaughter, and we have a couple of traditions that we do every year around the same time that we really look forward to, and it's special. And even within that, that is allowed to change. So this year, for example, one of the things we did, I noticed she might be outgrowing. And I didn't want to say, you're too old for this now, or this will be the last time we do it. But I thought about it, and I really soaked up this time that we did it. And I thought, next year in advance of this plan, I'm going to give her an option to do something that maybe will feel a little more appealing to her now at her age. And so again, that's showing like we can keep the tradition going, and the tradition can evolve, it can change. It doesn't mean it's going away, but we can give it some breathing room to grow. Allowing for some evolution of your traditions and being a little flexible about some changes in your traditions, I think is going to really be helpful for kids to feel like if something's a little different, it doesn't mean it's over, it doesn't mean the security is over or the rug's been pulled out from under me. And so I think that can be really a good thing to establish. And then I think embracing this idea that traditions are allowed to change. Yes, it is kind of the nature of traditions that they are somewhat solid and established, but we can have some flexibility around that. And I think, again, especially if you're coming into a truly blended family where both families had their existing traditions before, having conversations about that, being open about that. This was really special to us, and now, things are changing in our home, things are changing in our family. What can we do to kind of get to the essence of what was special about this thing and include the rest of our family in it and do it together? That said, if you are a newly blended family and a divorce or an end of a relationship is very raw for them, just be really, really sensitive to that. It's going to be hard, and they're going to have some feelings about it. My parents divorced when I was a kid, so I know that feeling. And when everything is changing and you were used to doing things a certain way and now it's different, they're going to have some feelings about that. Just hold space for them. Don't push new traditions. Don't try to rush to fix it. They're just going to have to process that grief. It doesn't mean your family is doomed or you will never have traditions together. It just takes time. And so the next thing I want to talk about is that not all traditions are planned. So we've talked about traditions that are planned at this point, and again, me with the organized fun. But one thing that I've learned is a lot of the best traditions have sort of just happened spontaneously and then repeated, and we didn't even decide for it to become a tradition, it just did naturally. Be open to that, and there again is the flexibility around traditions. Just be open to seeing what your kids are actually enjoying, what the family is actually getting value out of together, and what is actually meaningful to everybody. And if that went great, repeat it. You don't have to decide that it's a tradition. It just might become one. Or one of your kids might say to you like, oh, I love that we have this tradition that we do this. And you're like, I didn't even think that was a tradition, but yeah, now that you say so, I guess it is. As I mentioned before, it's so tempting to plan every moment of our lives. And when we do that, we're really taking away any space for spontaneity. And so again, this is something I'm working on, but I encourage you to just leave some room for things to come up that maybe will surprise you and maybe will become an unplanned tradition that becomes very meaningful to your family. And that leads into my next step for setting traditions, which is not all traditions have to be big. So they don't have to be planned, and they also don't have to be big. We've talked about outings, the kind of things that maybe repeat more annually, but there are also smaller, I think of them more like little customs that are done throughout the year that maybe don't have a set time or location or plan, but they can just happen a little more spontaneously, and I think those are incredibly valuable. Again, coming back to that definition of traditions and why we do them, for that sense of belonging and identity and connection to your history. So doing little things often that kind of give you that feeling, that sense of community within your family, I think is really wonderful. So again, kind of an example from our life of something that was both unplanned and quite small is this blooming teapot that we have. I got it when the kids were really little. I think I was pregnant with my youngest. And you can watch the tea bloom in this glass pot. And it was never my intention that this would be any kind of tradition. It was kind of just like, oh, that's cool, we'll do that. And it became something that the kids asked for often. And so now I think, we all kind of consider it a tradition. Another example of a smaller custom that kind of grew into a tradition in our home is that my husband will often spend time with his kids, my stepkids, while I'm reading to our younger son most nights. And he started showing them shows that he loves that my little guy's a little too young for. And it kind of grew into this tradition where they make popcorn and they get out all these seasonings, and I come downstairs and the three of them are curled up watching something together. And here again, it kind of just grew out of the repetition. Nobody decided this is going to be a tradition, this is going to be what we do. It just kind of happened authentically, and it's also one that doesn't totally include me. And so I'm okay with that. Sometimes I decide to sit down with them and join them, and other times I take that time for myself, and that's okay too. So be on the lookout for moments you're already sharing. Be open to noticing what could become sort of a recurring tradition or custom in your home. Again, it could be small, it could be unplanned, and just notice some of those things that are happening authentically. The last thing I want to touch on when it comes to traditions is that often more is not more. In fact, less is often more. And again, this is one where I kind of learned the hard way. I tend to try to pack in a lot of things, and I tend to want to do a lot. And so, well, hello. Hello, friend. This is Estella. She has decided to join us. You will often see a cat. So an example of this is early in our marriage for Christmas, I got an advent calendar that you could refill. I grew up having advent calendars that had chocolate in them, and that was always so much fun. And so I thought, why not take it up a notch and get this refillable advent calendar? And so not only did I want to put candy in each day, I wanted to put some kind of activity in every single day of December, something that we would do. Now, to be fair to my past self, I wasn't thinking a big thing for every single day, but I did want there to be something special every day of December as a countdown to Christmas. And I now just put candy in the advent calendar. It's for candy. My heart was in the right place. I wanted to make all of the magic of the holiday season be extra special. But now that I have been a stepmom for a while and a mom for a while, I have a lot more experience with just how chaotic the holiday season can be. And I recognize that that is just way too many traditions to try to do. So again, it doesn't mean that we have to not do any of the things that I thought of. We can do hot cocoa with marshmallows and watch a Christmas movie. That's fine, but it doesn't have to go in an advent calendar and pick out which day it's going to be, and we don't need to have 24 of those. And so let this be your gentle reminder if you are seeing on social media or even people around you doing all of these traditions with their families and you feel like you have to do all of the things. No one is doing all of the things. You figure out what is meaningful to you, you figure out what your kids actually enjoy and what is sustainable, what actually works in your life. And those will become your traditions, and those are enough. Remember what really matters about traditions and why we do them. It's for that feeling of belonging and connecting with each other. That's what matters. And so we don't have to create any particular thing. It doesn't need to look any particular way. It's not for the pictures. It's not to say you did it. It's to create that unity within your family and have everybody feel good together. Hey, if you got a good picture out of it, that's icing on the cake, and you may be able to cancel the tradition of the scheduled family photos that year. I've done that. Whatever traditions you enjoy with your family, just remember they don't have to be big, they don't have to be planned, they can change. You can always check in with how people are actually feeling about the traditions and just be open to seeing where it goes. I would love to hear what your family traditions are and how you've navigated blended family traditions together, so please drop them in the comments below. Also, feel free to leave any stories about traditions that didn't work out. Maybe you're like me and you tried to overbook things. Any funny stories are welcome. I would just love to hear from you. As always, thank you for joining me today, and I will see you next time.